Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
It's the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark, and as always, we are proudly presented by Nick Hopwood, who's a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with peak confidence. You can visit Nick's website at peakwm.com. What a week. Second week back for the Professor and the Pundit. Kind of previewed a little bit about the Michigan football team and its personnel. Talked about what we did over the summer a little bit as well. And you can go back to that first episode. I think it's number 69 on the list. This is episode number 70 coming up. And Greg's starting his classes this week. Both of us are going to be on the Big 1050 WTKA to do Fantastic Friday. Football Saturdays already started last weekend, but it starts for real for Michigan this Saturday. And there's a lot of Michigan news. We'll talk about the opponent. We'll have some recruiting news that happened over the past week. But I think the first story that we've got to talk about, Greg, is that Bryce Underwood was named the starter on Monday. Your reaction?
Not surprised. I figured he was going to play at best, maybe swap out and get some experience before the Oklahoma game. But yeah, all signs started to really in the tea leaves, in the Big Ten Network's visit to camp. It seemed like he was getting most of the throws with all the available information. With the injuries to Mikey Keene, he's going to be the guy.
That's it. That was the big one. With Mikey Keene not really being at full strength, even still to this day, it seemed like the writing was on the wall. I don't know what this means for Jaden Davis going forward. Hopefully he stays from a selfish point of view, but he's also got to look out for himself on that. And I don't think he's a bad football player. Just Bryce Underwood is a potentially generational football player. I don't want to throw cold water on everything, but just trying to be realistic about what goes on. Dylan Raiola last year started as a true freshman for Nebraska, and he was like the number one, number two quarterback in the nation. He threw for over 2,800 yards on the season. Good number. 13 touchdown passes, also threw 11 interceptions. And his quarterback rating was 11th in the Big Ten. Now, Bryce Underwood may end up looking like Vince Young when he leaves Michigan. But even Vince Young, kind of struggled his first season at Texas. Able to run the football great. Passing abilities improved as he got older. Bryce Underwood is certainly known more for being a passer than he is a runner, but he is a true dual-threat quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was something else because his teams were stacked. Defensively, offensively, he had all the weapons around him. And Trevor Lawrence threw for 30 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions in his freshman year. We can only hope, Greg.
Yeah, that would be great. That's the best case scenario.
The kid just turned 18 last week. But the great news is these young kids are wiser and older and more experienced than the kids who were 18 years ago. So, yeah. And the coaches at Michigan really feel that he's advanced beyond his years, but not only physically, but mentally. So we could certainly hope, but I just don't want people throwing things at their TV if Bryce Underwood's missing an open receiver every once in a while.
The Raiola example is a great one because that was a coup in recruiting. He was the number one guy. Nebraska looked at him as the savior or whatever. Savior is a little different for Michigan coming off a national championship, but I think it's good. I was actually thinking about that today, Steve. And, there have been other wonder kid quarterbacks, and you mentioned a few, but yeah, we got to dampen our expectations, this guy. And we're not going to have a 3 or 4 game easy stretch where he's going to be able to get in there and do his thing.
So no, in game 2, he's going to have the Oklahoma Sooners on the road at night. And it is one of the tougher places to play in college football. Oklahoma has its own story, and we'll talk about Oklahoma in next week's pod. Coming back to the expectations and Bryce Underwood, I think in an ideal world, they probably would like to kind of get him in as time goes on. But the Michigan quarterback situation with its roster and its youth and its lack of experience basically is dictating that the Wunderkind is going to start against the New Mexico Lobos.
Lobo. Bring back Sheriff Lobo.
Oh, you were waiting for that one, Steve. I like that. Very good. I got to ask you something. Do you like the opener? It's a little different feel, especially since they moved it before Labor Day, right? Because we live in Michigan. A lot of local people spend Labor Day up north or whatever. It's their last kind of breath of summer, even though the school calendar has been pulled before it, even in Michigan. It's a little different vibe to me, but I am always love the opener. I love the opener so much. I flew out to Utah when we started the season out there for Jim Harbaugh's. I found myself like, I got to be there. So I've actually been up north before at a lake or something like that, came back for the game, and then went back up north, like a true Michigander. I love it. But it is a little bit of a different vibe for me.
For years now, they've been kind of scheduling rather a winnable opponent. So there isn't much stress on that. This is not Texas versus Ohio State. I'll talk a little bit about New Mexico in just a minute, but it is 8 months without Michigan football. If you're a football fan, you just can't wait for the season to get started regardless of who the opponent is. I mean, it could be the Delaware State team that Michigan faced back in the Rich Rod years. It just doesn't matter. It's a chance to see the traditions again. It's a chance to see the band. It's a chance for old friends that you don't see outside the season.
True.
You congregate and you come back and you catch up, and a good time to celebrate, cherish, and be excited about 2025.
Yeah, and I like my wife says, well, who's Joe? Who's that? And inevitably this time of year, well, he's in this family circle of Michigan people, and that's one of my school buddies' family. Whether you're there, whether you're remote, we all have those little circles of people, and they kind of reunite, to your point. And it'll be fun, Steve. And I'm sure we will have a lot of stories from the game. I'm going to assume that Michigan's going to get the W. Tell me I'm wrong, Steve. What are we worried about? Are we worried about anything out there?
You really shouldn't. The biggest fear is injury. This is a completely rebuilt New Mexico team. New Mexico comes from the Mountain West. Michigan is a 5-touchdown plus favorite in this game, 37.5. New Mexico's got a new head coach. His name is Jason Eck. He comes from Idaho of the FCS division. Now, he led basically Idaho from a bunch of losing seasons to a perennial playoff contender in that division. And then before that, he was at South Dakota State. So he has spent 15 years in the upper echelons of FCS trying to crack open success at the Division I. And New Mexico is a program, it's the last resort or the stepping stone for like Bronco Mendenhall. That was going to be his retirement. Then he had one good year, and he immediately goes back to where his family is at, the state of Utah. He's now coaching at rival Utah State. Jason Eck, as I've said, is bringing all his good players, because this is what is going on in college football. Whatever your last job is, you bring the best players from your previous job that you can and bring them all in, because all of the good players of the job you just took all left as well. New Mexico's got like 35 transfers coming in. The quarterback, he played 6 games last year, led them into like the quarterfinal of the FCS championship, kind of like got hurt midway through the season. I mean, he's all right. But what I think is interesting is I think this is going to be more of a power running team. They went and got a recruit from Montana State named Scottre Humphrey, rushed for over 1,400 yards last season, 7 yards per carry and 16 touchdowns. Phil Steele named him to the Athlon's All-Mountain West first team. And then if they thought that was enough, they went and got another 1,100-yard rusher in Damon Bankston from Weber State. And then all new receivers, a completely new offensive line. If the one guard didn't come back because he went through the transfer portal, if he did not come back, then New Mexico would look like Washington from last year, having 11 new starters on offense. Defensively, their best player is an edge rusher named Keyshawn James Newby. He's an FCS All-American who had 10.5 sacks and 55 pressures at Idaho last season. The strength of this team is going to be a linebacker, where 2 of their guys actually stayed, and they're fairly decent. Then they got the coach's son, who was a first-team All-FCS player as well, coming in. So linebacker, they're loaded, and basically every other position group, they're starting completely brand new.
All right. So a little uphill climb here for the Lobos. We will see. Maybe we wanted a little bit of a stronger opponent, but either way, starting the brand new freshman quarterback, maybe this is a good way to get off our feet, get the guys back in the stadium, get the fans juiced. So, Steve, you gave me 0 to worry about. Even sometimes you give me like a punter or something. Like the punter, man, nope, shaking his head.
It's a whole bunch of unknowns, and the guys that they're coming in, and again, who's being ranked on first and second teams are coming from the FCS or came from a conference in which they contributed 1 touchdown on the year. There's a lot of selling hope on New Mexico.
Ann Arbor,
yeah, and they're going to Ann Arbor too.
Yeah.
A couple of big pieces of news. One I got to mention is about recruiting, and a guy that Michigan and its fan base has been looking at getting all year is a top-notch running back. In fact, he's a 5-star running back by 24 and 24/7's composition ratings. The number 1 back, the number 9 player overall in the nation, according to the comp. The number 24 player overall, the number 2 running back on the ESPN 300. Regardless of the rating, Savion Hyder is the guy. Had Ohio State, Tennessee, and Georgia in his Final Four. Those teams had Hyder as the running back they wanted the most, and Hyder chose Michigan. That gives the Wolverines 2 5-stars on the verbal commitment list for 2026. I stress it's a verbal commitment list for next season. And the other is edge rusher Parker Meadows, who also chose Michigan over Ohio State. And yes, Greg, Ohio State fringe fans were clutching their pearls over the Meadows verbal commitment. Now they are doing the same over Hyder and the NCAA announcements that are going on. It's not been exactly the greatest week for Ohio State in terms of Michigan news.
There was a hopeful sense that, when the hammer drops, all of these guys that Michigan's also recruiting, well, they can't go because they're not going to be able to play or whatever. And that never happened. And here we go, adding more to the fire.
Yeah, they're coming to Ohio State anyway because Michigan won't be able to retain the recruits. Won't be able to retain the recruits because they won't be able to go to a bowl for the next 5 years.
Right.
We've all heard this.
Just fanning the flames. You got to love it.
But a little bit of bad news. Exactly, not a little bit of bad news in general. I really liked the improvement of the offensive line that was going on, and one of the guys that I thought was going to factor into this, not necessarily start, but get some playing time and get some reps and plays under his belt. One of those 5-star players from 2025. It wasn't just Bryce Underwood, but a right tackle named Andrew Babaloa. Reported last week early that the freshman tackle may be lost for the season over a knee injury. This has not been yet confirmed by the university since over the weekend, but there's some strong indications from numerous sources that this has happened, which is why I bring it up, because we're fairly certain that this is true.
Babaloa is a guy that has been brought up by the coaches quite a bit as one of those guys really making strides as a young player. We talk about Underwood so much. This was kind of the other guy, and so that's a bummer. And offensive line is an area that concerns a lot of people. It's one of those places where all the help we can get and to develop this, hopefully, burgeoning superstar, to lose him hurts.
It does. In the long run, I can't help but think that Michigan's gotten 2 5-stars from 2025 and 2 5-stars for 2026. I just don't remember that happening in recent Michigan history. I think you have to go back to the Lloyd Carr years where something like that was happening, and it doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be superstars and first-round NFL draft picks and NCAA All-Americans. Past performance doesn't necessarily guarantee future results, as they say in the stock market disclaimers. But you're working with an advantaged position with somebody with that much talent. And this Michigan coaching staff has already proven that they're coaching up with the players that they've already had. So, yes, unfortunate news there. That's going to hurt Michigan's offensive line just a bit with depth.
Yep, absolutely. Do we get a little bit into season outlook, Steve? I think this is probably the point. Certainly, we will calibrate, reassess as we go along. These first 4 games, particularly Oklahoma and Nebraska, everyone's got them marked on the calendar. But right now, where do you see Michigan finishing? How do you look at this? How do you approach it?
I look at to see what's losable. I talked about last week on the pod that I want to look at the quarterback, which is absolutely outstanding, but unknown and young. I look at offensive line, defensive line, where are the games being played? And I see Michigan having 4 losable games this year with 3 road games at Oklahoma in week 2. Not much time for Bryce Underwood to get his feet wet. He's going to be going into one of the toughest places to play for a night game in week 2. The road game at Nebraska, one of the dark horses to make the college football playoff, is on the schedule. And USC is always talented with an explosive offense under Lincoln Riley. That too is on the road. Haven't even mentioned Ohio State. Those are my 4 games. Greg, you want to throw Michigan State in there as well as a losable game?
On the road every single time. I don't think you can look at the history of this rivalry since Michigan State joined the Big Ten and suggest that the road game at East Lansing is going to be a walkover. I just won't do it. So I throw it in there as definitely losable.
I'll include Washington too. And the Washington Huskies, yes, they beat Michigan last year at their place. I'm a big fan of their new quarterback coming in. I haven't watched him play a lot, but he's really, really dynamic. His name is DeMond Williams. He had a completion percentage of like 77% on the year, and he threw over 100 passes. He got to play a couple of series in just about every game. Real running quarterback too, very, very fast. This is one of those guys that I'm kind of thinking might be a breakout star in the Big Ten. How high does he go in the quarterback echelon? I really don't want to guess on that, but I think Washington as a team, they had to deal with a lot of things, including only having 6 offensive linemen on scholarship and available throughout the course of the week, which meant the first team played as the second team in practice. And because of that, they were doing a lot of non-contact. And with so many starters that they did not have, now they got a year under their belt, I expect Washington to be better. Their record may not be better because I think their schedule is a little bit tougher. But I think Washington is a team that I think is going to be better than last year, personnel-wise, talent-wise, coach-wise. And they're coming into Ann Arbor this year. So that's always a possibility. Now, the thing is, Washington lost every game basically on the road outside of their home state. They lost them all. And maybe that will happen again as Michigan struggles to win on the Pacific Coast. Maybe Washington has trouble winning outside their own state. But those are the games that you want to look at. And then, of course, who else is there in the standings? Well, Penn State and Ohio State and Oregon, I mean, I'm very comfortable with saying they're going to get into the playoff. But then you got Illinois, which has a lot of returning starters and a fairly decent schedule. I see Indiana with 4 losable games with the teams that they're playing. Nebraska has 5 losable games, but they play a few of those games at home. I think for Michigan, you're in with 2 losses. 3 losses for Michigan, and it's probably a no. It's probably a no for many teams. I think the only team that might be able to get away with it is Ohio State if they had 3 losses because they're playing a number of teams on their schedule. Let's say they lost to Michigan. Let's say they lost to Texas. Let's say they lost to Penn State. They'd probably still have enough quality wins against Washington on the road and Illinois on the road that it might get them in with 3 losses, plus to the national champions for last year.
Feels like it.
But 3-loss teams are hard. Ask Alabama whether they got in with 3 losses. They did not. So to get there, I think Michigan's passing game, it's going to improve, but how much will it improve?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, how much will it improve?
That was probably the weirdest dynamic, watching a team that could physically basically not pass the ball last year for several games.
They were a early 20th century football team without the forward pass, essentially.
Yep.
And I'm sorry that I'm, really hitting on Michigan quarterbacks from last year, but I mean, it's just they were not considered a threat. And when people know you can't do one side of the offense, they just bear down on the other side, and it makes it more and more difficult for the line and the running play. It's what happens to Iowa. You don't have an Iowa quarterback who could pass. Well, it means you're not going to have a team that can run, and you're not going to have an offensive line that's going to be able to block, and it just spirals on one another. So it's amazing that Michigan did what they did last year, considering that they were not really passing the ball with any effectiveness. So defense has to be good as last year, and that's possible. Michigan won 2 games they weren't supposed to, in my opinion, though. They beat USC when I didn't think they should have. They beat Ohio State when they should have. You could argue that Michigan could have been 6-6 instead of 7-5. Minnesota fans will probably tell you should have been 5-7. If you ask them personally. But I think they're going to be probably 4th or 5th in the Big Ten this year with 8 or 9 wins. I don't think the playoff picture is realistic for them, but I'll be happy to be surprised. Road schedule for Michigan is tough, as I mentioned. And anything beyond that, it's probably going to be because of Bryce, the running game, and a great defense.
All right. So healthy Bryce, 9 wins, and let's say it includes Ohio State, beating Ohio State. Are you taking that deal, Steve, right now?
I'm always happy with the fact that Michigan could extend its streak over Ohio State to 5 in a row. Now, of course, everyone will say, well, would you be happy if Michigan went 0-11 and the one game they won is Ohio State? No, I wouldn't be happy with that. But you give me 9 wins and a win over Ohio State, I'll get over the losses.
This is Brad Pitt in Inglourious Bastards. You take that deal? I'd take that deal. That's a damn good deal. Something like that, right? So I would take that deal. I would take, if you're offering me, I would take it. Yeah, we want more. Of course we do. We're Michigan fans.
You know who wouldn't take that deal?
Who's that?
And I'm thinking of Brad Pitt's accent. Alabama would not take that deal. To go 9-3 again. 9-3 again. Let's say they beat Auburn. Yeah. Okay, big deal. But you finish 9-3, they'll be running Kalen DeBoer out of town for a second consecutive season of 9-3.
Yes,
they would not take that deal.
Oh my gosh.
Greg, speaking of the ups and downs in the college football world, the stock market went down, then up, and no one's exactly sure what's going to be done next. But the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, spoke at Jackson Hole, his last Jackson Hole address, and people read the tea leaves and said, bye, bye, bye. Still trying to figure out things. Did I get ahead this week or was I behind? These are things that I have tend to worry about in the past, but I worry about it no longer because when there's guys like Nick Hopwood, who is the sponsor of our program, to have you put in a plan who sees these things ahead of time, find out your risk tolerance, can put you in a plan that makes you just be able to light up a cigar anytime you want to.
Yeah, just like Tony Alford after they got this Savion Hyder. Yeah. So, light up a cigar. Nick does a great job, too, on social media, like keeping you updated with like the latest changes in tax law and retirement law. Check him out on social media. But obviously, he's a huge partner. If you haven't, if you got a question, if you're thinking about opening an account, if you just want to know Nick, check him out. Where can they check him out, Steve?
PeakWM.com. That is Peak, PeakWM.com.
We got to get Nick in the office. Nick, thank you. All right. Steve, we haven't talked about the House settlement. I feel like since as much as we've talked about it over the last many, many episodes, just a quick laydown of what's happened, where we're at, some of the implications that are already playing out. Does that make sense, man?
Absolutely.
All right.
And a lot has happened.
All right. So the House settlement, which I expected to be approved the last time we were on at some point, is approved. It's here.
They waited to the 11th hour to do it. It was like the first week of June, and it was July 1st, right?
There was a negotiation, and you know how it goes with negotiations. And the judge wanted something. The two sides weren't happy about it. They worked it out. Okay. So I would say the biggest thing here is that schools can now directly pay up to $20.5 million to the athletes that play for them. And most, I know we talk about football a lot, most football programs, the major football programs are allocating about 75% of that money. There's no official number. There's no stated number that I've seen. We've seen some people talk about it,
right?
But we don't actually know. But it's safe to assume that's around the number.
It is. I think some schools have kind of said exactly, and other teams are kind of following. That's, to me, the most interesting thing, that most schools have kind of following suit with one another. When you say 75%, then maybe 20% goes to basketball and 5% for everybody else. And it's kind of determined on a case-by-case basis. If the field hockey team says, I got the number one player in the country in, but I need something, maybe that's where a portion of that 5% would come through. We talked about in months past about whether some schools would decide to go more all in on basketball.
Yes.
Maybe it's 50-40-10, but in basketball over football. And of course, conferences like the Big East, it's definitely going to be that. But would teams in the Power Four actually adopt that model? It would seem like they're not going to. That the football thing at 75, 20, and 5 is what's happening.
Yeah, and again, I'd add women's basketball is getting a little bigger cut as well. Thank you, Caitlin Clark. But to your point, the Western Michigans of the world can opt in. They just won the Hockey National Championship and allocate a few $1 million for the hockey team. They can do that, which would outspend Michigan hockey fans. So keep that in mind, okay? And a lot of them are opting in, these other schools. By default, the P4 schools, the Power 4 schools are opted in. That was the nature of the settlement. But the other smaller schools have the option. Okay, what else did it do? It changed the ability on scholarships. A lot of teams had limits in scholarships. The scholarship limit for the football team used to be 85. What they did is say, okay, here are roster limits for every varsity sport in the NCAA, and you can give a full scholarship to everyone on every roster. Okay. If you do that at Michigan with 29 sports, that would be somewhere between $25 and $30 million additional expenses to cover all that financial aid. So they're not doing that, but they are going to give more scholarships in general and more spread them out. I'm sure the softball team, the women's basketball team are going to get their, more scholarships, wrestling team, all that kind of stuff. So what did this do? All of that, and we're not even talking about the NCAA settlement money with the Connor Stallions deal. All this netted new costs for athletic departments. So Michigan knew this was coming, and when they produced their budget in June, the regions present the budget, they assumed an injection from Michigan, the University of Michigan proper, of $15 million into the budget. Why? So it balanced. Okay, again, this isn't like a corporation. You don't take losses and things. You don't show a huge profit, or that makes ticket holders crazy, right? You try not to show a huge loss because that's a little bit embarrassing. But they effectively said, we can't figure out how to make up $15 million here. So the school said, all right, we're gonna inject $15 million into the athletic department to do that. It's a little funny money. It's real money, but it's a little bit of funny accounting.
My dream of a Metallica concert later this year isn't happening?
Well, thanks to your boy Stallions, we got some other problems to figure out, Steve.
Yeah.
Plus the revenue sharing is only going up. Okay, so maybe we'll get Metallica in the big house. We'll see. But they do have to find new ways, and they knew this. That's why Zach Bryan's playing on the bye week. That's why they're getting creative. I've heard from people at the top that other things are in the works to experiences, if you will, but to enjoy this kind of thing.
I don't want to get past the idea that the University of Michigan put $15 million into the athletic department. That's an historic move, is it not?
It is, because Michigan's always prided itself on being self-funding and self-sustaining. Why? Historically, you had a lot of powerful, you still do, but a lot of powerful academics floating around Michigan. I think they looked at South Campus and the athletic campus with a kind of distasteful they wondering if that's part of our mission. And what you told those people is, hey, Professor, a-hole, they're self-sustaining. Don't worry, you're not losing books, pencils, projectors, all that stuff. We're not sending money over there. They handle themselves. They balance their budget. They fill the big house and they pay for themselves. I think that was the historical answer. Well, what they're saying now is no, that's not the case. It's more than we can even make up with all the seats in the big house. So,
well, and here's the other thing is Michigan has 6 home football games this year.
Yes.
For years, I know they've tried minimum of 7, love to have 8.
Yes.
And that basically means to have 8 is that every non-conference game is played at home, which means you're not playing anybody of significance because you usually have to do some sort of return trip. Well, they decided to do a home-and-home with Oklahoma, and the road game in Oklahoma is the same year that Michigan is in the time where they play 4 home conference games versus 5 road conference games as a part of the 9-game conference schedule. Put that together, they're in this rare error of having only 6 home games, plus the $20.5 million of revenue share, plus the back payments for this whole house settlement to begin with. And yet, we're not getting what, say, Tennessee's athletic director Danny White did to season ticket holders by giving a 10 to 15% surcharge on all season ticket holders for volunteers, calling it a talent fee.
Right.
That is what they called it. They called it a talent fee. It's on the statements. Not happening yet.
No, it's not
here.
happening yet. I don't think it's past them to do something like that. They'll probably at some point, but you're right. The headline was the 6 games. If you look at the budget, like the letter, the headline, they don't give you a lot of information, but they certainly made everyone aware that we only have 6 home games, and that's a big factor. So who's keeping an eye on all this? Who's keeping an eye on, are we spending only the 20.5, or are we going to 30? Who's keeping that? Who's watching the roster limits, right? Who's watching all this stuff? Well, it's not the NCAA, probably, thank goodness. They created a group called the College Sports Commission. They have a CEO, not a commissioner, because that sounds too much like Roger Goodell, Steve. Okay.
We're still laughing at the whole notion, but go ahead, continue.
They partnered with Deloitte, the big accounting firm. They partnered with a group called LBI Software, which manages salary caps in the NBA and other leagues. And the last thing they're going to try to do through all these groups and this data is also not only try to make sure people are playing within the rules, that the deals themselves, all these phony deals from collectives where guys were putting on a hat and getting, $500,000 and then not doing anything else, they're trying to make sure that the deals have a reasonable valuation and they're for a valid business purpose. I'm using their terminology. And that's what they're set out to do. I'm not aware of, to date, Steve. They came out and first said,
yes,
these collectives have got to go.
Right.
Then they said, all right, the collectives can stay, but they got to be good.
I know. And this is what we both kind of predicted months in advance, was what's going to happen when the first deal gets rejected. And Ross Dellinger of Yahoo was following this along. He was like, okay, 2,000 deals were submitted within the first week of the NIL Goes Sports Commission and Deloitte looking at it. And a number of them, but it was way less than 50%, all clear, no problem. They had a good plenty, like 10%, outright rejections. And they were outright rejections at major schools like Alabama, Notre Dame, Georgia. You have been rejected. And then sure enough, within a few days, excuse me, I'm sorry, we're all in a moratorium about all this judging. And then a week later, they basically said, okay,
Letters from lawyers.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and the lawyers from the House Settlement weighed in and says, you can't reject this deal.
Yeah.
And they went and did this about face and says, all right, collectives can stay, but you got to show that it's for something instead of them judging. So I am now calling NLI go, NIL go ahead anyway.
All right.
They changed things real quick, and we haven't heard boo from them since.
Right, and I don't think I mentioned, but NIL Go is the portal where people are supposed to go and submit all their deals and all their data, and the students are supposed to do it. But who's to say they're even doing that in the first place? But apparently a lot of people are, but that's what that is, the NIL Go. So yes, Steve, I think that's brilliant. So the biggest question, did revenue sharing replace like what was NIL before? No. Revenue sharing is table stakes. It's the base. That 75% that you have to pay your players, you can assume that Purdue's doing that as well. So how do we differentiate ourselves for transfers, for new recruits and all that? You still have to have groups like Champion Circle, which is our collective, and they have fundraisers, and they have golf outings, which we might talk about. $20.5 million is table stakes. It's sea level. It's where you start. Any other news? Hail Impact, Steve, the charitable collective that we had at Michigan, effectively closed its doors. They donated any kind of deposits they had back to the athletic department, so they're gone.
Who was leading that? Because you've mentioned their names before.
Yeah, so Michael Leach, our friend Shelly Kovacs was on the board. My man Chin Wirapuli was one of the founders, if you know some of these people. Yeah, so that was kind of the group behind it, right? They all have like a Bo era Michigan legend tied to them, right? One group has Wangler, one group had Leach, another group has Jamie Morris himself, right? So, speaking of Jamie Morris, I'm not sure. I haven't heard a lot of headlines out of Stadium in Maine and what they're doing, and that's Jamie Morris's group. Not to say they've gone away, I just haven't heard a lot lately. It does seem like, though, as an official partner, Champion Circle has kind of rose to the top, and they're the primary funding source for a lot that's going on, so we'll see what they do. But, there's a lot so to go here with all. So there's many different ways players can be compensated. They can still get a scholarship, and most of them do. They can get revenue sharing from the school, and they can go out and earn their own deals. Like I heard Dr. Pepper and Fansville's back. You can be on Fansville, right, to get that. And then I feel like it's a different lane. You can kind of be part of the funding that groups like Champion Circle raise. So there's all these different ways that general managers and players can go out or request or argue that they're worth to be compensated by playing football or whatever sport they play. There you go.
Summed up brilliantly by the Professor Greg Dooley. By the way, your classes are starting.
They are.
And what
this week.
Is this year 4? Is this year 4 for you?
This is year 4, and I think it's year 3 that I'm doing all 3. The NIL class, of course, came out of all this. So I'm not nervous. I'm excited. Is there some anxiety? I guess maybe a little bit.
Why?
I don't get nervous, though.
No, you don't. That's not you. No, I just feel like it's actually starting to settle down a little bit. I mean, I can imagine last year, it's like you just taught something last week that they just decided to scrub and scuttle, and now there's a new plan, and it's like, okay, we're revising the final.
Yeah. The hard one, I got to say, the hard one's NIL, because I looked at the syllabus, and we can read the first few articles because they're kind of quintessential. How did we get in this mess? There's even a portrait. I wrote an article about what was going on a year and a half ago. I just read it this morning. It holds up. It's a snap in time of what it was like when it started. But now after that, it's all new material, all new lectures, all new stuff. So we'll see, man. But it'll be fun. But Steve, speaking of Champion Circle, I did get to golf at one of the outings. And you know which one of my friends really likes to golf? And that's Tim Adams, the founder and CEO of Maverick Technology Partners. What do? They place people. They provide contract services, IT project managers, chief information officer placement, managed services, data centers. Big thing. We watch CNBC all the time. All the chip makers, all the hyperscalers. They don't manage that stuff themselves. They have other people do it. I don't think Maverick is managing any of Google's data centers yet, but maybe they will. Automate your technology, bring in engineering functions, do it right. Contact Maverick, mavericktechnologypartners.com. That's mavericktechnologypartners.com. All right, Steve, let's get moving. So I think I told you I played in the Champion Circle golf outing, happened to be held at the Cardinal in Plymouth. That happened to be where the Live Championship was this past weekend. And I got to golf with Sharon Moore, Brandon Dorado, Bryce Underwood rode along. He did not swing a golf club that I could ever see.
So wait a minute. You were playing in their foursome.
Yeah, it was more like a 12-some or maybe a 9.5-some. And because it was I believe it was sold out, and so they stacked guys on tees. So there's an A group and a B group.
Okay.
And, we were all, we kind of were all in the same friend group. So the guy who sponsored those spots said, hey, why don't we just combine? And we ended up just combining our groups, both teams hitting off at the same time, basically. And it was a lot of fun. Justice Haynes, I got to ride with him and talk to him. What an impressive young guy. I think I sold him on coming in and speaking into my NIL class.
Nice.
He's a big fan of Nick Saban because he came from Alabama. He can talk about the game last year, but also talk about the different dynamics that he's seen during his career in NIL, so I can't wait. Bryce was great, a very impressive young man. He's an absolute beast, but you know that. One thing that's funny, I noticed a lot of the football players, they're probably showered with all kinds of Jordan gear all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of picture them in the gear. I noticed that a lot of the guys, they almost purposely don't wear Jordans. Okay, well, why? I don't know, but I see guys in Bryce, for instance, had Adidas Sambas on, right? It's like, I get those at Schembeckler Hall, or that's my work uniform. But when I'm out, I wear this. I feel like that's the case.
Are you exposing something there?
I don't know. I think it's a fashion thing. You expect to see me in the Jordans all the time, but I'm going to wear New Balance. I'm going to wear Adidas. I'm going to wear Ons.
There is been some NIL deals that conflict with the sports team themselves, and the ruling has been on that. You got to wear what the sports teams are providing you, and you can still have your NIL deal that might be with a conflicting brand, and do that on your own time. But if you're still wearing the uniform, you still gotta wear the team name.
We talked about this a long time ago because there was a rumor that Notre Dame was going to be flexible about that in their new deal. They did not, but there are rumors that other schools are going to say, hey, we're going to make it flexible for you to wear what you want. I haven't seen it, at least on a major school yet. But, yeah, you can still have a deal and wear those kicks, and maybe that's where Bryce is going with that, around and promote their brand. But on the field, you got to wear your Jordans, of course. Steve, what else? Adam Schefter, got to hang out with him, had dinner with Adam. I got his phone number. Now, Steve, I got to ask you, how many different phones does Adam Schefter have? And did I get the same number that someone like Jerry Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, the owner of the Cowboys, has? Stephen A. Smith? No. I think I'm on like not even the family one. I imagine he has 4 to 5 different phones.
Right.
And I'm sure I'm on 5 plus.
You're like the person who has Instagram but doesn't use it.
Okay. For him.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, it's like,
I don't mean to mention it, but 3 months from now he'll look at it. And
right.
If he needs it, he'll remember because, people like that have a good memory.
No. Yeah. So I'm also trying to get Mr. Schefter to speak, I think, in my leadership class just about his career, because he's really rose to the top of his profession. Like, what is that like? What can we glean from that?
I bet he gets a lot of this type of stuff, and he probably has an assistant manager, somebody who that phone number might go directly to the assistant manager. As if you ever used it,
or it's AI.
It might be somebody else that picks it up.
Yeah.
But that, hey, that's a lot. That's a lot better than I would ever get.
It's pretty cool.
With Adam Schefter.
Yeah. So, great dude, I got to say. Gus Johnson was there, Steve.
At the golf outing?
At the golf outing.
Okay.
I don't know if he golfed. I think he rode around. Again, I was busy with Sharon and Coach Nerado and Bryce, so you can imagine. So they had a little panel. Jake Butt, very, very impressive, polished presenter, speaker. He was on the panel. Like he was there with Gus and Adam Schefter on this panel they had. He was right there with them, as a seasoned pro. So I give him a lot of credit. In the middle of Gus talking, and he kind of hinted over and over again, and surely he was playing to the crowd. But yes. he half jokingly or not, he kept saying "we," talking about the football program, and then correcting himself and saying the Wolverines. And then everyone would laugh. He goes, I mean the Wolverines. And it was like that kind of thing. But then in the middle, Steve, he said to the group, he was asked about Bryce Underwood. He said, I wrote a poem about Bryce Underwood.
I'm sorry.
Do you want to hear it?
You wrote a poem?
Do you want to hear it? And then for me, I stood up. I kind of wanted to hear this poem. Almost out of amusement. A poem? And he went off, Steve, and I sent you a clip. I don't know if we have it, but I'm sure we can play it. It was beautiful.
We got it. Let's play it.
He wears number 19. He's from the east side of Detroit. 19. The East Side Undertaker. Alpha and Omega. A little later, he will be greater. Dream maker, giant slayer, Heisman taker, chip maker, first player, a devastator. Lombardi hits him sooner than later. That's what I think about this kid.
Oh my gosh.
How about that?
I didn't even know that was Gus at first, but wow.
That was Gus.
It's funny.
I don't know how you
It's funny.
I was amused. I think you might, if you hear someone, that's my video. That was my recording.
Yes.
So you might have heard a chuckle in the middle of that. Okay.
We did.
Okay.
It's interesting in the same week because people at Ohio State who have a lot of raw nerves exposed, I think heard this or heard him talk about Michigan in some other instance, and now they think that Gus Johnson needs to go for the Ohio State-Michigan broadcast because he's now too one-sided and too homerish for the Wolverines that his professionalism is now gone.
We've seen this so many times with broadcasters where both sides think they're after him because going into this thing, people ask me, like, is Gus going to address the fact that a lot of people weren't happy about the words and some of the things he said at the end of the Ohio State game last year. And he never did, but he did do the we thing a few times. It's fun. And again, I got to say, like, there's some people, Steve, I'm sure you've met them, where they don't apparently turn off their, whatever their persona is, and you hear them. Like, I have a feeling like when he calls the plumber, he's using the Gus Johnson voice. And he is, I have a water problem in my house. A water problem. You know, he was like that on stage. And I got to say, I really, really loved hearing him. Like, it was enjoyable, man. So I do, you know, we're half teasing about the poem. He was really good. He was really fun to listen to. Like, I'd go hear him speak. So
there were things that have made people in the past prior to this Michigan-Ohio State game 2024 that make people think that he's a closet Ohio State fan living in Detroit. You know, another J.K. Simmons, you know, type of guy. You know what I'm talking about? We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum. You know, that guy. And then, of course, now Ohio State people are upset. The only thing that I can remember equivocating this to is the way people felt about Brent Musburger. People always thought Brent Musburger was against their team. And here's my theory on this, that when you get super excited about a play call, you can't stand it when they get super excited about the team you hate scoring a touchdown or making a big play, and you take it personally, and your arms get crossed, and you said, look at him being unprofessional. He's really seeming to enjoy it. Now, he'll do it for your team, but when he's doing it for your team, you're not sitting with your arms crossed, listening to every word you're saying. You're standing up, leaping out from your couch, screaming, giving everybody in the room a high five.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
if it's your team doing something, you're yelling. You're no longer listening to the broadcast. You are screaming. You're
also, if you did hear it, of course he's using energy. That was a great play for my team. Right? Yeah. Steve, it's a great point. I think you're right. There are other examples. I can't think of them right now, but I know there's a lot of people who feel that way, that they're out to get us or get me all the time. So. Absolutely.
Gus
Steve.
Johnson is in the crosshairs of everybody right now, which means he's probably doing his job.
Maybe he'll write a poem about it, Steve. Oh, they auctioned a Ohio State, one of the pendants, one of the charms that, of course, the team started issuing over the last 4 years as a rival tradition to the Ohio State gold pants tradition.
Like one of the ones you're wearing?
I'm not wearing it at the moment, Steve, but I have been known to wear one. Hey, where did I get it? Don't worry about it. Maybe that's a future podcast. They wanted $2,500 for it. So I don't know if someone got it. I assume they did. They offered a trip to fly with the team, go to the practices, fly back with the team to the Southern Cal game. And yes, it went for tens of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So that would be pretty cool.
Well, not to be outdone, I don't know if you've heard this. The University of Oklahoma is selling seats to their post-game press conferences.
Yeah, I saw this on your social media, Steve. Yeah.
They have dollar figures. The opener for Oklahoma, not as much, but for the Michigan game, I think it's well north of $500. You get 2 seats at the Michigan-Oklahoma press conference, and you're not allowed to ask a question.
No.
You're not allowed to raise your hand and ask a question, but you're allowed to sit there in attendance, and people are paying for this. I think there are a lot of people in the media world who go to these things that wish they could pay themselves out of going
for sure
to these things.
I tell you, especially the last few years with Harbaugh and some of the coaches, man, if you gave him an out to say a short answer, he gave you a short answer. If he wasn't in the mood for talking, yeah, the press conferences really since Rich Rod just haven't been very fun, I've got to say. And this isn't a complaint at all. I'm just telling you, it's not all what it's cracked up to be, because these guys are trained, and it's very, very much Bull Durham. They you know.
The coaches don't want to be there. They want to make sure they say as much neutral knowledge as possible, even right after a game is over. The only game that you kind of want to see at a post-game press conference is one in which you got a big victory. And for me, I usually like, what's even more schadenfreude, like to go to the losers' locker room after a big Michigan game just to see how they're coping.
Yeah.
That's just me.
It's a good strategy.
But yeah, they don't say a whole lot. It's very neutral language in there. And boy, it's just, it's kind of a grind.
Yeah.
Kind of a grind. But you know what? If you've never done it before, sure, people will spend $500 a ticket to go attend a press conference.
And I know, and we're a little spoiled. We've got a lot of access and a lot of things, and I've seen, like I've talked about this before, but I've seen people who won the ultimate Michigan football experience, and what were they doing? They were basically everywhere I was for game day, pre, during, and after. Like, okay, so I guess we're living that. So don't take it for granted, but again, $500, yeah.
Hey, first time I got to be on the stadium field for a game, I can't remember, I was like maybe 20, 21 years old.
Wow.
It was core memory.
Yeah.
Absolutely core memory of Michigan fandom. So when it happens for the very first time, yeah.
Shoot, Steve. I still get excited going on the field. Can I share a little story? Speaking of golf and the golf outing, I mentioned last week that Nerado leaned into a few, like a lot of hockey players do. Steve, we can't get out of here without mentioning our big trip that we had up to Arcadia Bluffs. We played all 3 courses. Great group of guys.
Fantastic.
Including the pundit himself. But don't you know it, people? Just like Bryson DeChambeau, Steve looked down the fairway of granted, not a super long, but a 360-yard par 4. Guys were on the green. And wouldn't you know it, Steve hit a drive. It disappeared off into the mist. We couldn't quite see it. Steve drove the green on a par 4, people. The pundit. 4!
It did happen.
It was fun. And then we turned the corner, and the guys were up there in the green. We didn't scare them. They loved it. They couldn't believe it. They heard the ball roll up on them. Steve, well done, man.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're going to ever forget that one.
I'm not. Let's set the record straight that for the most part, Greg was out driving everybody in our foursome on a regular basis, but that was a unique hole for me.
Not that one.
I've had a few occasions with that club where I have hit it in the distance, was mad that I couldn't find it, drop my ball, take the penalty stroke, hit it up, and then drive up another 70 yards and find it.
Okay.
And
I believe it.
So,
seeing is believing.
But the other thing is, besides doing that maybe 2 or 3 times, but the thing is, I think I'm a poster boy for why you don't need to buy new clubs every couple of years, because I'm playing with clubs that was given to me in the 1990s.
Yeah, they look like you picked them off a wall of a Ruby Tuesday or something like that.
Yeah, the fact the driver I used on that hole, the grips were shedding. It was like hair was coming off, fibers were coming off of that golf club.
Maybe that's because you're such a massive beast, and
I don't look it.
Okay.
I don't look it. I just must have a lot of torque or something. So I saw DeChambeau just rip one 360 on a dogleg right. He chose to go over the trees and over the top, and he got to 360. I looked at him, and he just laid into it as hard as he could. I don't have the size of Bryson DeChambeau, and I'm trying to hit the ball evenly. I need a truthful assessment of my game. Greg, do I look like I'm trying to hit the ball as hard as I can?
You have an angry swing, like on the tee box. It's a very violent and angry motion. But for the most part, Steve, like you pulled it off very well. Yeah, from there. And I definitely, for someone who doesn't golf, Arcadia Bluffs, if you don't know, is kind of one of the most iconic set of courses in Michigan. They just opened a 3rd course. You more than held your own with guys who generally regularly golf a lot.
Thank you. Now, I haven't picked up a club in 4 or 5 years, other than going to the driving range, and because I'm afraid I'm going to hit people or I'm going to hit houses. The great thing about Arcadia Bluffs was none of the courses had houses on them.
Yes.
That I was going to hit, so I immediately felt at ease that I wasn't going to be talking to a lawyer after my round,
which is good
because I've not only hit into people's properties. I've hit a house before. I've gone over a people's house before. I appreciate that. I'm very thankful to be asked, honored to be asked. It was a great time. And now I kind of got the bug again. And if I can get somebody who can actually teach me on a few things, then maybe I can start playing more on a regular basis. But thanks for bringing that up. That is going to be a core memory when I go. And
it might be things only Greg and Steve care about, but we want to share it with you. We did some planning for the show. And, of course, Steve, we're going to be on Fantastic Friday, which is the annual tradition at WTKA where they have the pregame. They get all the guests. They take over the radio station for the entire day. We're going to be on, 1 to 3 Eastern?
1 to 3 p.m., which is what we've kind of done the last couple of years. And so we're going to do that again. Miz is going to provide us with some guests that we'll talk to. And it will be a very quick 2 hours. I'll stress over it like I usually do. Make sure I don't ask dumb and stupid questions and get us to commercial breaks on times and do all the right reads and things like that. But it is really Fantastic Friday for me as a kickoff to the season. Then, of course, the countdown to kickoff will begin at 3:30 because the New Mexico game is a 7:30 kick. That means the Big Ten 50, in which we will both be on, will start at 3:30 in the afternoon on the Big 1050 WTKA.
Cool, and I believe you can catch us streaming on the Big1050.com on Fantastic Friday. You can catch the pregame show and other places. If you're local, 10:50 a.m. Steve, I think that's it. I think we're out, man.
That is going to wrap it up. I said next week we'll review this. We'll talk about Oklahoma more in depth, and I'm going to talk about the SEC going to a 9-game conference schedule, and I think this is a win for the Big Ten. It is not a win for the SEC, but it could be under certain circumstances. But in the meantime, just want to remind everybody once again that Michigan football, the preeminent football team in the Big Ten, national champions of 2023. Go Blue, Greg.
Go Blue. See you out there Saturday.